you are never stuck. You can always build your way forward. We cannot compute our way to flourishing and happiness. Can only do that by trying stuff. If I don't get good grades, my future is reduced to not the optimal. Live a life of and not or. I'm not an engineer by heart, and maybe some other discipline would have served me better. We're just feeling more okay with the not knowing it all. And if you have a crystal clear way forward, then you haven't done enough mucking around.
Hello and welcome to another edition of the IC India podcast. Some very bright smiles today, thanks to the Indian cricket team having just got us the ICC T20 Cricket World Cup trophy. And after 17 years to boot. I certainly remember exactly where I was and the moment when we last witnessed this happening. Amazing feat by the boys.
Yeah. But the thing about victory though is that it is the culmination of months and even years of grueling effort that goes behind that one defining moment. Or you could say that it is a series of conscious choices to design one's journey that lead to that eventual victory. And each one of us can benefit from this very conscious life design methodology. And I think that is what we are going to be talking about today, designing your life.
Yep, this methodology, which was born at Stanford's Life Design Lab by the duo of Bill Burnett and Dave Evans, and made popular by the book of the same name, has been making waves and awakening people globally the past many years. And now it is here in India, thanks to our guest today. He's someone who has had a hugely successful career as an entrepreneur, leading QAI, a global workforce development and consulting firm, as well as QGlue, a design and innovation consulting venture. And now he's on a mission to help people live more informed, purpose-driven, fuller lives through bringing Stanford's DYL to India. Corporates, institutions like IIM Lucknow, IIT Jodhpur, Ashoka University, among others. And he's even recently piloted across schools for high school students, empowering them to make sound decisions for their future. Here's welcoming Navyug Mohnot to the IC India podcast today. Thank you officially, Navyug, for joining us for this conversation today. And I have, of course, had the good fortune of working with you and seeing you from close quarters. So I know you have a lot to share, and I'm looking forward to all that you will share for our young audiences today. So many layers and facets to yourself. And that is something we've been trying to encourage ourselves, embracing your multiple facets and identities. And we may not even have enough time to unpack everything that's made you what you are. But I want to just begin by asking you, of course, studied at IIT Delhi, then went to the US for your master's, then started a company which went on to become hugely successful. In fact, the leader in its field of operations and process consulting, and which went on to acquire its parent company. This is a story I never tire of telling. Now, all of this would, of course, have taken, single-minded and being laser-focused to make it all work. But at what point did you personally realize that you did not want just your work endeavors to define you and take up all of your time and energy, and you wanted to keep time for your other pursuits that make up your play, Or are you really one of those rare wonders that's made all these amazing things happen while still managing to maintain a full, all-fulfilling life throughout?
Thank you, Megha and Abhinav, for having me. Abhinav, I'll answer that in two ways. Yes, one did find time, and then I'll tell you a little more about it, to do stuff that I care for outside of work. But I did make it a point to, as you said, play outside of work. But importantly, to me, work was play. And one did everything. And, and one of the reasons I wanted to be an entrepreneur is so I would have that freedom to do what I want. And I did what I did as long as it was fun. And of course, it had meaning and financial sense it made and everything else. And those are minimum conditions for being in business and doing your profession. But I think I was fortunate. I think I was intentional. I think I was lucky to have a lot of team members. And maybe there was some amount of self-selection, but we had a lot of fun at work. And fun not in the party and beer and thank God it's Friday sense, but just fun in the sense of doing creative stuff, innovating, being challenged, being okay with stuff. So it just kind of worked out that. And once you're doing that, I think you have a lot of leftover energy to do other stuff outside of the workplace. So both worked out.
And of course, your latest baby, if you can call it that, is now you're probably the first, or at least one of the first Stanford certified designing your life coaches in India and bringing it to this part of the world. So that is something Megha and I have talked about in the past. That is a methodology that is immensely powerful, and would like to know from you, just for the benefit of our audiences, what it's about and the kind of promise and power that you saw in it when you signed up for it.
Yeah, happy to, because I feel pretty strongly about it and also passionately about it. I'll do a 1-minute origin story of DYL, 1-minute origin story of how I got into it, and then maybe just spend a minute or two on what I think is the essence of this framework. So Bill and Dave, the authors, the best-selling authors, Stanford professors, are design professors. And like all the stories we hear, Silicon Valley stories, they were having coffee in Silicon Valley with a paper napkin and had an epiphany and said, okay, all the principles and practices and tools and methods that we use for great product and service design, how might we use that for great life design? And they said, let's give that a shot. And they did. And the first course was well received. And they wrote a book, and that became widely successful. And they said, hey, we're on to something. This really seems to resonate with people. They need a framework. So this was 15 odd years ago. Now, that's the origin story for the DYL as such. And for me, one day I chanced upon the book because I'm a design thinking enthusiast, and I started reading it. And I said, oh, wow, all these principles, which they have served me in my journey, in my life. And I very truly, deeply thought their value. And I said, if that is the case, then I must, it's interesting, but I said I got to, as we all do, sit and design my life the way forward. And in that my life design, I said I must evangelize, and it almost became a mission for me to take this to a large number of people in India, engage with Stanford and Kathy Davis at the Life Design Lab, and she's been amazingly helpful, and then we're doing this year. Now I'll cut to, what really is this life design or a designing your life framework. There are multiple ways to say it. For one, it's, life not by default, but by design. We all tend to grow up with social narratives. We grow up with some limiting beliefs. We grow up with what our mom, dad, aunt, uncle, grandfather said, what social media is saying. And clearly we're a product of so many narratives, and which is not a bad, but what designing your life says is pause, reflect, and see which ones are serving you, and to be aware, and then to build intentionally from it. So that's the starting point. And the second important thing about designing your life is, because the scaffolding is design thinking, you are never stuck. You can always generate ideas to build your way forward. So I think that's also very powerful. The third is, which I think is equally and maybe even the most powerful tenet, or call it the essence of the framework, is try stuff. We cannot intellectualize our way towards a fulfilling, flourishing life. There is no equation. We cannot compute our way to flourishing and happiness. You can only do that by trying stuff and seeing if it works. So DYL really, really urges you to get curious and to try stuff and to tell your story, and then keep building your way forward, rather than having this one large, over-ambitious, overarching goal and say, I will get there, and when I get there, I will be happy. And research has shown that People spend a lifetime, decades to get there. Some don't. And when they do, it's really not as exciting as they thought. And it is exciting at times, but it's exciting for one day or 1 month. So designing your life is really about the continuous journey of wayfinding towards a flourishing, happy life now, tomorrow, day after, rather than getting fixated on that one big goal. And then this is, 2 or 3 things that really stood out for me. And reframing, being a design thinker, and reframing is a superpower. So in DYL, we're always talking about how you can reframe and move forward and build your life forward. And I think these are 3-4 things that really are the pillars of DYL. And there are lots of smaller ones, but I would say these 3.
And yes, that high of getting to that one big goal is just very, very fleeting, very, very transient. And yeah, I wish more people realize that.
Yeah, I was just saying, I just love the use of the phrase, like, there's the equation for life. That's something, as I think, as a trained engineers, we're always looking for, what's the equation? How do I solve life? But I think what DYL has taught me is to always look at how do you design the process and not try to find a solution there's a solution as such. So would remember it.
I wanted to go back to what you mentioned earlier, the social narratives and the limiting beliefs that we often come under. So from your experience taking DYL to people in this part of the world, what are some of those, cultural nuances which pose as these very limiting beliefs and, narratives that you see as potential challenges, or which probably you have come across as challenges?
I think there are many. I also think that to some extent, all cultures and societies have, and strong ones and like ours have a lot of them. I would say that many of those serve us, many of those narratives, perhaps to some people in some context, don't serve us. So duty towards family, I could say that's a limiting belief. I could say that's a huge source of strength and support and the kind of, system and that we grow up in. And the fact that, we must put in our efforts, it's a very Eastern culture, or at least an Indian cultural thing, and not worry about the outcome could be actually a little limiting to maybe certain cultures. It's also, I think, quite useful actually to say that you keep doing your stuff and building your way forward and not get attached to that one final outcome. It's a difficult question to answer, Abhinav, but, with the youngsters we saw, the good news is that we did some surveys as part of our program, and we thought there would be a lot of parental pressure as showing up in their limiting beliefs. It didn't. I thought there would be a lot around, do you have agency? And it didn't show up as a limiting belief. Having said that, our sample is extremely limited. India is 1 zillion different micro segments. The urban, educated, cosmopolitan, young people in high schools today seem to be pretty empowered, pretty upbeat, but they are almost all, however, universally feel 2 limiting beliefs. One, if I don't get good grades and I don't get a good college, my future is going to be mitigated or reduced to not the optimal level. And the second one is, thanks to social media, the other thing in our survey of these students said that I am not enough and other people have got it figured out and they're cool and I'm not that cool. And we know that thanks to social media and all that is happening in the world today. But these are 2 that I see in urban 15-year-olds or high schoolers here. I wouldn't know what's going on in, the B-towns and the villages and everywhere else. So I shouldn't hazard a guess there. But on the whole, we're in exciting times. I see youngsters with a lot of pressure, but at the same time, pretty ambitious and hopeful. So it's almost a dichotomy. They know it's an exciting world and they have 100 choices. And that causes pressure. And they know they're all connected and they have friends and support and they know what the world is about. And that causes pressure. and they know that their parents and the world is global and they can go and study anywhere in the world. It's opportunities, but that also causes pressure. So it's cutting both ways. And my approach to all of them is to reframe so that, we can see it for what it is and without get the emotions in it. And pressure is fine as long as the emotions don't make you dysfunction. So that's my whole attempt, is for them to see this, to reframe it, to get the emotion out of it, and yet see life for all its challenges and, go and slay the dragon and conquer the world and have fun, but not really get too emotional about not being able to do something. So it's a nice balancing act, and they respond pretty well to these conversations. They respond, and they're also balancing their acts. We had a challenging life when we were young. They have one also. They're on their journey.
Absolutely. I mean, it's interesting when you mentioned that, our core spiritual beliefs of the land and, all of that also has to be taken into account. And it's an ongoing tussle anyway for all of us, isn't it? How to balance our cultural ethos as well as becoming globally assimilable as a people. Like, we don't want to...
And I would argue and say that if we get clarity around it, it is not a tussle. These are not opposite forces. They can reinforce each other in a very positive way. And to some extent, DeVile is getting one to start to think about them not as opposing forces, but the ability for the two to coexist to your advantage. And I firmly believe that we can use it to our advantage. And we have this very strong set of messages and cultural constructs. It's partly my credo in life, but it's also a kind of a thing about DeVile. I really believe in this thing called live a life of and not or. And I think the magic happens in the and. And DeVile actually helps you to, as a designer, to resolve contradictions and use it to your advantage and build your way forward. And is so powerful. If you really look at every innovation in the world and you peel it and you peel it and peel it, at the bottom is someone resolved and contradiction, and there's an and. The innovation is usually an and. So the DeVile is using the innovation principles of design thinking for your life, and if we can put more ands in there, I think we're better served. We're giving them the tools and a little bit the mindset to think of life as ands and not feel stuck.
In fact, so is there anything that you have done already in bit to sort of localize the DeVile methodology as it originally stood to the Indian context?
We did take some interns also from the liberal arts places. We started to do research on, family, duty, karma, religion, and all the messaging there. And then trying to see how that would fit into, or how DeVile, the framework, would be able to accommodate these ideas. And do we need to make any change? So here's my early conclusion. The framework is the framework, and it's not prescriptive, and it absolutely encourages you to import into the framework for your own design, your world and your life. So in no way is it saying that I don't believe in free will, or you have free will, or you should be this religion, or parental duties are going to hold you back. So as a good framework, it allows for all this. And given your context and cultural constructs, given that, what's the optimal way of designing your way forward? So while we went through that whole exercise, I believe that we did come up with any change in the construct. What we do have a change in is in the conversation. So when we're, having, these programs, whether with the high schoolers or the adults or the college students, now I've kind of done it from 16-year-olds to 60-year-olds. A, humans around the world are quite similar. B, a 16-year-old is quite similar to a 60-year-old at a fundamental level. Everyone wants happiness, flourishing, respect, affection. The fundamentals remain the same. The context and the conversations change. But a person at 60 is also looking for a flourishing life. Their challenges are different, and they also want respect and affection, and to still do things which speak to their strengths, as does a 16-year-old. So it's at one level, it's very universal, all this. At the other level, we do have to be very sensitive to the context of the audience there and the conversation. And the conversations, given the nature of the class, they evolve and, that gets discussed. So a long answer, and in short, we haven't felt the need to change the model, but we have certainly felt the need and have different conversations for different cultural contexts or age groups. It allows for it. And that's, I think, a great test for a framework. And, Abhinav, the same happened when we started 32 years ago. The area was quality and quality management. And they said, quality in USA is different, quality is India is different. Quality in this context, and how can we import everything here? Guess what? 32 years later, I can tell you, we didn't have to Indianize quality. Quality is quality. Just the context is a little different. The basic principle tenets all applied. We have worked for 32 years around the world, from Ukraine to Japan to US to India. The fundamentals are pretty much the same. And I believe the same as for humans for their life. But, I might change as I learn more and do more and be better informed. But as of today, my view is that the model didn't need to change a whole lot.
Right. That's a testament to the effectiveness of the model, that it already provides for the fact that it's applicable to various cultures.
No, I was just curious about one thing. In your experience, have you noticed that when during one of the exercises of TYL, when people have to come up with their value systems, have their opinions been muddled by everything that's going on? Like you mentioned, growing up, we have the societal value system, and we might think that that's what our value systems are. Or, for example, you defined fun for you, what it meant is different from what largely people consider as fun. But often, did you see any changes in, say, the youngsters? They were more confused with these definitions, whereas older people had it all figured out? Or was it uniformly similar or dissimilar?
No, I think great question. And I'll even say that the older people, or the 30s and 40s, are more confused than the youngsters. And partly because they know more and they've seen more. So to that extent, the younger folks are going to move on in life and I guess experience it for all its complexities and other stuff. Having said that, I think they're just very seized of career, colleges, and more importantly, that if, to me, the biggest thread that came out is, are we choosing the right discipline / major / college / career? Is this for me? There's someone who wants to do, computational biology, but also wants to be an architect, and is heavily conflicted, and they're two very different things. So, the real thing they're confused about is, what's the right career for me? What's the right major for me? What's the right college for me? What's the right subject for me? Because they are far more aware and intentional about doing stuff that they feel a fondness for or an attraction to, as opposed in our times, we used to just go because that was what was available, and mother and father said, go become an engineer. So I went and became an engineer. And I'm not an engineer by heart, and maybe some other discipline would have served me better. I don't have regrets, but I just went. But today, because they're more aware and there are more choices and parents are a little bit more open, I feel that's their real stress. And for the adults, it's a different kind of stress. They've done their careers, they've done 15 years, and they're saying, we're earning well, we're doing well, all conventional definitions of reasonable success, but we're not getting a sense of meaning and purpose from what we're doing. And we're on this treadmill, doing well, but feeling like we're on a treadmill. And the 60 or 50-year-olds are saying, we've had an amazing career. And some of them have been Stanford PhDs, IIT, consulting, everything, head of mobility, the works. And they're saying, well, we just have this one last chance to really be who we are, that we've always wanted to do, and make impact and blah, blah, blah. Different use cases. The younger generation, I think what's most valuable to them coming back to the younger generation is for them to discover themselves and see what they love marries what they're good at. Some of them just keep going with what they're good at because they get good grades and they can. Some of them get fixated with passion and, follow your passion, someone told me, and they want to do what they love to do and passion only to regret later. One of the big things about DYL is to really get them to think about the marriage between what they love and what they're good at. Because I think this is necessary for a better design. And to know what you love, you need to try stuff. To know what you're good at, you need to try stuff. So it's a journey of discovery in the early phases. So you can figure out what you love and what you're good at. And then the next layer of analysis or reflection, which we don't do too much of now, is what the world will pay for. But I think for the moment, what you love and what you're good at is enough. And that's their attention.
Yeah, that would be Ikigai, which Megha, we've also spoken about in the past and which Navyug also happens to mention during the...
And it is Ikigai, and DYL gives you the tools and the framework and the exercises and reflections and conversations to unpack this. And why I like this is because it's a set of tools. It's not just a concept. And that's what makes DYL, I think, effective, because it's nice to tell a kid, you go find out what you're good at. And it's another thing to help them along and take those, prototyping actions, because that's the only way they learn. So, this whole bias to action stuff. So if I had to, you asked, it's just coming to my mind again, the essence of DYL. One nice way to say it, a bias to awareness followed with a bias to action. And that cycle keeps happening and you keep designing your way forward.
Yeah, so I was just curious, what would your suggestion be to people, say, in tier 2 cities or who don't have the luxury to explore? For them, just get a job, pay the bills, support your family. So what would your suggestion be to those students who just can't at this point in their life?
Or even grown-up people, for that matter, who have, lost that sense of spontaneity, in their life.
I would say two things here. On the one hand, I'd say, if you are feeling trapped or if you're in this cycle of you have to pay the bill, you need to come to terms with it, accept it, and know why you're doing what you're doing. Because once we have that larger picture, it kind of takes the emotion away. And again, there are tools and reflections for getting to the state of, I'm not going the spiritual direction, but in a design sense, starting with where you are at, accepting, reframing some of the situations and seeing it for what it is. And the second part to the answer, which I think is, to me, the more important one, is even for those people, surely for those people, as for everyone else, there is a creative way forward. It is almost a limiting belief to think that you are trapped in this Sisyphean, you'll go to your job and pick up a paycheck, and the next month you'll go again and you'll pick up a paycheck, and that you're condemned for the rest of your lives to roll the rock up the mountain. I personally, and this could be a personal thing, I would urge them to not feel stuck or condemned. Even those people, every one of us, in our own limited ways or limitless ways, depending on the context, can creatively design their way incrementally to a better situation. One day at a time, one brick at a time. And DYL gives you the mindset, the courage and the tools to take those steps without completely making you unhappy because you're not going to become a rock star tomorrow, or to help you set goals which will make you Virat Kohli or Dhirubhai Ambani. No, we don't. It's not a motivational thing at all. It's saying, given our circumstance, what are our limiting beliefs? What are the constraints? How can we generatively figure ways forward and design one day at a time to move forward to a better life? And I think it applies as much to them as it does to people who have no constraints or much fewer constraints. We can all use great ideas and generative problem solving, creative problem solving, reframing limiting beliefs, and using every other tool to just move forward incrementally, one day at a time, without getting frustrated.
I wanted to come to you with something we did, of course, talk about social narratives and, all of that earlier. And we also spoke of the importance of yes-anding your way through life, bringing in spontaneity. And yes-and is, of course, as powerful way of thinking as it can get, improv, theater artists, and they use it as well. But do you think it is as easy to have it implemented here in this part of the world? Because portfolio careers is something that has become quite the buzzword, but you see people globally flaunting the fact that they have multiple side hustles and, that they do part-time DJing or gigging as a musician. But here they're still quite restricted and almost afraid to show that they have passions or pursue things outside of work, because moonlighting and stuff like that makes news and then causes a huge debate. So do you think we have a bit of a way to go to accept multiple identities, or embracing multiple identities here in India still, because people are just afraid that they'll become unattractive to recruiters?
Yes, yes, that is true. And once again, I'm going to give a counter view. While I agree with what you say, it's cool and it's nice to have portfolio careers. One can argue by saying that, you don't fix your identity to that one thing, that we have multiple lives and aspirations in us. And, given where we are in terms of affluence and society and the economy, and the latitude for doing that is surely lesser than maybe some other societies. The question really is does that make us, and to what extent, does that make us less happy, feel that we are flourishing less, and decrease our sense of well-being? See, ultimately, all this we are doing so that we have a sense of well-being and flourishing and a sense of happiness. So yes, we are more constrained, but at the same time, research has shown, and I can argue saying that this poor man, the laborer, is no less happy than the guy who has all the latitude in the world. And you need a minimum level, of course, of subsistence and everything else. But the question really is, and there's this lovely article, I forget the author, but, it says the extraordinary, ordinary life. And a vast majority of people around us, if you see, the wise people, some of our elders, and if you look around, and they're living extraordinary, ordinary lives. They are happy. They have family. They have health. They have a sense of community. They have some purpose. They're doing their own little things in a smaller town, in a village, or in a pocket in a big city as well. So this notion of having a rock star life or an extraordinary life, I would like to challenge as well, because ultimately we're in the pursuit of well-being and flourishing. And in one of the courses, I just talked about this concept. You cannot imagine. I remember just a few people there. It suddenly just became like all this pressure suddenly went away. And I'm not against portfolio careers and having freedom and latitude and opportunities. Don't get me wrong. All I'm saying is, you have that, you make the best of that. You don't have that, you make the best of what you don't have. You can have an extraordinary, ordinary life, and you can have an extraordinary, extraordinary life, and you can have a very ordinary, extraordinary life, and everything in between. It's really what we make of the cards that we are dealt. And I believe that some of the most modest people have extraordinary lives. They have really lives that we can be envious of. And some of the most successful and richest people don't. And no judgment. It's you can be doing well in any context. I think in some sense, in my approach to DYL is we try to bring this out. DYL does not say go out and become the Olympic star or be a Nobel laureate. It just says that for where you are at and who you are, how can you move towards greater well-being and flourishing? It does in no way implore you to say that you need to be a rock star. That would be a disservice to the person who came to the program and to life in general. Because a lot of all the motivational talks and management literature and all these successful people keep talking about that big end state. And DYL really talks about the journey. You will get to the end goal of choice. And so why I like this is it's a cliche, but here is a framework which really unpacks the journey and does not set you up for some large goal only to feel frustrated later.
Yeah, that's a very balanced and a very comforting answer because, we seek, that sense of purpose, that sense of security in our own self and our own identity by ourselves, because that's all that is in our hands. The external factors, constraints, externalities, and everything will conspire eventually. So that's a very good.
It is. That grandmom wakes up to serve the grandchildren and make some lovely food and go to the temple and everything, right? And she's living a great life by her definition of great life. And I can even argue by the positive psychology sense of what a great life is. For her, accomplishment is to have raised 2 great kids, and now she's raising 4 great grandchildren, and that's an accomplishment. I personally feel that it accommodates, not just accommodates, because that's maybe even a weak word. It encourages us to really look at where we are, who we are, where we are at, and to unpack that to say given the context, can we lead a life of happiness, well-being, and flourishing, which I believe we all have a right to, and we all can, irrespective of economic status. We all have aspirations, and we must grow and grow and grow and design our way forward.
I think when I had first come across DYL, I think one of the, of course, reframing limiting beliefs and all of that was powerful. But one of the first things was just looking at life as comprised of 4 buckets of work, play, health, and love. And so if 1 or 2 things are not going, perfectly or at the level that you'd like for it to be, but, the rest of the buckets are close to being full, then that's reason enough to be happy.
And just taking from this cue, I'll give you an interesting anecdote. See, Martin Seligman's work in University of Pennsylvania around well-being theory, he came up a model called Perma. And this is what we research, and their science is shown as what we are after. And if we balance this well, or we would have a great, a life of well-being, P is for positive emotion, E is for engagement, R is for relationships, M is for meaning and purpose, and A is for accomplishment. Now, that's not everybody, but I'm just generally saying we're over-indexing on accomplishment. And maybe with time, then we kick in the meaning and purpose. We do tend to, in this race, forget relationships a bit, but the most important element is relationships, engagement, and positive. Okay, so I in the high school, and these are 16-year-olds, right? I introduced Perma and said, a life of well-being, just planting the seed. You want to be having fun, playing tennis, having positive emotions, doing whatever else. You want to be engaged with your hobbies and careers. You want to have relationships, meaning, and accomplishment, blah, 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 blah. They understood. In the end, we have a group photograph. And when you have a group photograph, you always say cheese and everyone smiles when you take a group photograph. And to my utter surprise, I said, someone said, we're going to shout something. What do we shout? And you know what they shouted? Perma. That was hilarious. Well, the point is, this little one acronym resonated with the 16-year-olds, that in the group photograph, it was just a passing section. So I guess that was quite an aha moment for me. And Perma is not just for the adults, but just planting that seed that, life. And like you said, your portfolio of work, play, love, and health. And once we see them in its entirety, we can build a better life. And the kids loved it.
Just that little thing showed just how much of a chord it struck with them.
Yeah. And it struck with the adults once when we're closing class and we have these final takeaways. And, this guy was from Accenture in Mumbai program. He said, I came with karma, I'm going back with Perma. That was also a shift. You see, his mindset was around karma. And that's not gone away, but he's saying, I'm now going back with Perma for a life well designed. It's gratifying that they're liking it or they're finding it useful, but it's amazing amount of learnings for me. So I'm so so grateful to be able to interact through this medium or through this. I get clarity as I teach it. I get clarity as the conversations happen. I get clarity as I see people. I get inspired. I try stuff. I get clarity that I feel, extremely grateful.
And of course, few things are more satisfying than, getting to shape young minds early on and just getting to help them with building resilience and just looking at life in a more holistic way than just probably the tunnel vision that they would otherwise have suffered from.
And, we do the survey before or after for, that one takeaway after the courses, we're just feeling more upbeat, more confident, and more okay with not knowing it all. And that's the bottom line. And if you have a absolutely crystal clear way forward, then you haven't done enough mucking around. So now they're suddenly okay saying, I'm going to figure it out. I don't know yet, but I will keep figuring it out. Well, because they have this stress of, you got to have it all figured out. My friends got it all figured out. They know everything. Actually, they don't. Everyone postures. And now suddenly it just comes in the open. And now they're so much more relaxed. And we will figure it out. I will figure it out. And it's okay if it's not all figured out. It's not just anecdotal. This is data. This is their biggest takeaway.
So, given the huge impact that you've seen this DYL can have on young minds, people who cannot attend the workshops, or what resources do they have to implement these ideas into their lives?
I think impact happens person to person, the energy in the room, the safe space that gets developed, the community feeling that gets developed, the personal connection, because I love them, that generation, that young. And it shows. I really do love them and their enthusiasm and audacity. And that itself, I think, translates or transfers to them. And it's a great experience. I don't know how I'm going to scale this. I do know that at least for the 1 or 2 years, I'll do this personally, physically, just so that I learn as much as I need to learn by being in the arena. Then on the side, we have already started as part of my mission and foundation. We've already trained 4 people and got them trained at the Stanford course. And they are now able to teach this as well. So we are getting them ready. And at the third phase, maybe we will have maybe an online version. Maybe these kinds of courses, it's not knowledge, it's not technical, it's not online, won't do justice. So I'm and yet there is some value to have something rather than nothing. So I'm struggling with it. But right now we're just going to scale as much as we can in a physical sense, at least for a year or 2. And then we'll see. And the shifts happen because of the energy in the room and the relationship, the look in the eye, the brain processes all that. So as in DYL style, I have not put this airy, audacious goal of saying we will have 10 million people trained by this date, that day. Nope. I'm just going to keep moving forward, designing it forward. New ideas, new people are showing up. More are joining the mission. Youngsters, elders, so many are volunteering. Like Abhinav is helping. There's so many helping. And it's growing. And I don't want to put a goal and saying we will be there. And you can argue that we should have goals that will drive us. But it's just who I am. And I think to some extent, I think I want to keep enjoying the journey. And then I think we'll be more authentic and less pressured. And at the same time, we're being creative. We are being innovative, and we are mindful of the fact and really do want to make more impact. So it's the dichotomy. And again, they're coexisting.
Hopefully a lot more can start attending, because I think I had taken the course almost 2 years ago. But I still remember that last day of class when 3 of us were holding hands and we were supposed to just say out loud what for the next year we want for ourselves. And that I remember what I said, I remember what the other 2 people said. And I stuck with that whatever I said out loud in front of those other people, that stayed with me for the entire year. And I still, and I'm following that, what I wanted for myself. So I completely understand how community matters.
Everything, even the room, We don't realize how much role architecture plays in the shifts. And I'm not saying it happens for everyone, but if it happens for a good percentage of people in the room, that's fine. But we're trying, we're learning.
So happy with today's conversation. It has been a masterclass of sorts on life. And hopefully this is just a sneak preview of what one can expect if they ever choose to sign up for the DYL or the DIF program. And before we let you go, Navyug, so you are, of course, right now on a multi-city tour of sorts with the Design Your Futures program. You just wrapped up one in Delhi, and there's one coming up in Mumbai, I believe, sometime later this month or next month. So what would your message be to high schoolers at the cusp of making major decisions for life? Parting words for them. What could they keep in mind for them to sail through life?
Please come, make this minor decision of coming, and hopefully it will help you make a major decision in life. And this is just in general, right? Not just high schoolers. I just feel that, there's always a way forward. That's what my life and lived experience has showed me. It's just for us to put in the effort, use some tools, believe that there's a way forward, be creative, have some courage to try stuff. But it's amazing how we don't need to be stuck in 1 month or in 1 year. The point is, can we keep moving our way forward? So I believe we can, and it compounds. And the power of compounding is huge. Can we just get started?
Yeah, thank you so much. It was just wonderful listening to everything. I'm so inspired right now. And I hope everyone listening is as well.
Thank you, Abhinav. Thank you, Megha. Wonderful talking to you. And it's lovely to meet you, Megha, as well. And I've had multiple interactions, and it's always a pleasure to meet Abhinav. All right.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Navyug, once again. Yeah.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.